We unpack every morning not to the sound of birdsong or the gentle rising of the sun, but to the rhythmic, phantom hum of a world that never sleeps. It is a subtle vibration that resides in the marrow of our bones, before we have even opened our eyes. We feel it as a tightness in the solar plexus, a quickening of the breath that suggests we are already behind, already failing, already missing some invisible threshold of success that was set by an architect we never met. We reach for our devices, our fingers tracing the familiar contours of glass and light, and in that singular movement, our geometry is broken. We fracture. We scatter ourselves across a dozen digital horizons, responding to messages, monitoring the collective pulse of anxiety, measuring our worth against the curated highlight reels of strangers. And we do this without ever once pausing to feel the weight of our own bodies in the space we occupy. This fragmentation is not just a digital habit, it has become the fundamental architecture of our existence. We have been taught to believe that to be present is to be ineffective, that to exist in a singular, unwavering state is a luxury we cannot afford. We move through our days like light passing through a shattered lens. When the light of our attention hits the prism of our daily lives, it does not pass through with the strength of a focused beam. Instead, it refracts, scattering in a million directions, illuminating everything and mastering nothing. We feel the friction of this scattering as a deep, pervasive exhaustion. It is the exhaustion of the mirror that reflects 1,000 images at once, and in the process forgets that it is glass. We walk into our offices, our homes, and our public spaces carrying this chaotic geometry. We hold our shoulders high, guarding against a threat that exists only in our projections. We clench our jaws as if holding the world together by sheer muscular effort. We have convinced ourselves that if we simply pay attention to enough things at once, we might finally secure a sense of safety. We believe that by accumulating more data, more connections, and more certainty, we will eventually build a fortress strong enough to withstand the impermanent nature of life. But the more we grasp, the more we scatter, the more we try to manage the infinite variables of a modern day, the more we lose the ability to inhabit the only thing that is truly ours, the present moment. Consider the way we navigate a typical hour. We sit down to perform a task, to build something meaningful, and before the first coherent thought has fully taken shape, a notification pulls our awareness elsewhere. It is a gentle tug at first, but it acts like a structural shift in our internal geometry. We pivot. Our focus moves from the deep, quiet waters of intention to the shallow, turbulent surface of reaction. We do this dozens, perhaps hundreds of times a day. We think we are multitasking, but in truth, we are merely fragmenting. We are losing the capacity to sustain a singular, luminous intention. We are becoming a geography of disconnected points, a map with no center. And because we have no center, we feel the tremors of every minor disappointment, every delay, and every critical word as if it were a tectonic shift. We often tell ourselves that this is just the cost of living in the modern age. We normalize the background static of stress, the persistent low-grade hum of anxiety that keeps us from ever reaching a state of true stillness. We treat it as a weather pattern we must endure, rather than a condition we have unknowingly cultivated. We have become experts at surviving, but we have lost the art of living intentionally. We have forgotten that our capacity for focus is a muscle, and like any muscle, when it is constantly stressed and never rested, it atrophies. We have forgotten that our intention is not meant to be a flickering candle tossed by the wind, but a steady, focused beam capable of cutting through the illusion of chaos. To understand why we feel this pervasive sense of unease, we must first recognize that we are playing a game with rules we have never questioned. We behave as though our worth is tied to our utility, as though we are machines designed to process the world rather than beings designed to experience it. We believe that if we stop, if we allow ourselves to be truly silently present, the whole structure of our lives will collapse. We are afraid of the silence because in the silence we might realize that the walls we have built are made of nothing but habit and fear. We are afraid of the geometry of the self because we have spent so long hiding behind the fragmented reflection of our own busyness. Yet, there is a profound truth waiting beneath this scattered exterior. There is a depth to the human experience that our current, frantic geometry has obscured. Beneath the layer of intellectual obsession and the need to be constantly informed, there lies an inherent capacity for clarity. It is not something we need to acquire, it is something we need to reclaim. It is the ability to withdraw our attention from the peripheries and return it to the source. It is the movement from being a mirror that reflects the chaos of the world to being a prism that understands how to focus the light of consciousness into something purposeful and profound. We are standing at the edge of a new understanding. We have spent so long running away from the quiet that we have forgotten how to sit with the discomfort of our own scattered energy. But the discomfort is the starting point. It is the signal that the old ways of organizing our attention are no longer serving our evolution. When we feel that sudden pull to reach for the phone, when we feel the urge to fill a moment of silence with noise, when we feel the anxiety of a day left unfinished, we are being given a choice. We can continue to allow our lives to be defined by the external forces that pull us in 1,000 directions, or we can begin to consciously reshape our internal architecture. We must realize that the scatter is not our nature, it is our conditioning. We have been conditioned to believe that life is a series of problems to be solved, and so we approach our own internal landscape as a project in need of constant optimization. We look at our lack of focus and we blame our discipline. We look at our exhaustion and we blame our workload. We rarely stop to look at the very way we have chosen to perceive the world. We do not see that we are the ones holding the scattered pieces, trying to glue them together into a whole that is fundamentally fragile. As we move forward, we are going to look at the geometry of our intention. We are going to examine the ways we have been architecting our days and see where we have allowed the noise of the world to become the architect of our souls. We will explore the anatomy of this fragmentation, not to judge ourselves for the ways we have failed to be perfect, but to understand the mechanics of our own liberation. We are going to learn how to drop the shield of constant reactivity and discover what remains when we stop trying to control the uncontrollable. We are going to reclaim our attention, not for the sake of becoming more productive, but for the sake of becoming more present, more integrated, and more truly, vibrantly alive. This journey is not about fixing a broken person. There is no broken person to fix. There is only a way of perceiving that has become misaligned with the truth of our own nature. We are like a house that has been built with too many doors and windows open to the storm. We do not need to tear the house down, we simply need to learn which doors to close and how to face the wind without being blown away. We are going to explore the radical possibility that peace is not something found in the absence of challenges, but in the presence of a mind that has learned how to focus its light. There is a quiet power in deciding that enough is enough, that the constant scattering of our energy is no longer a price we are willing to pay for the illusion of control. There is a deep, foundational strength that arises when we commit to being present with the reality of our lives, exactly as they are, without the need to reshape or reorder them to fit an ideal that doesn't exist. We are moving toward a state where the noise of the world no longer defines the boundaries of our internal peace. We are moving toward the center. We are beginning to see that the geometry of our intention is the most powerful tool we possess, and it is time we learned how to use it. We begin to notice the physical manifestation of this fragmented geometry in the small, almost imperceptible ways we inhabit our own bodies throughout the day. It is a slow, quiet accumulation like the silt that builds up at the mouth of a river, until one day we find that we are no longer swimming, we are merely being carried by the sediment of our own anxieties. Consider the archetype of the constant optimizer, a persona we all wear at some point. This is the part of us that believes, if we can just arrange the furniture of our lives with enough precision, we will finally be safe. We walk into a room and our eyes do not rest on the beauty of the light or the texture of the wood. Instead, we immediately begin to measure, to critique, and to mentally rearrange. Our shoulders, once designed to carry the weight of our own existence with grace, become hunched, pulled forward by the phantom gravity of future tasks. Our jaw, designed for the nourishment of the body, remains clenched, a silent gatekeeper against the perceived threats of an uncertain, unoptimized future. We feel this most acutely in the late hours of the afternoon, when the initial momentum of the morning has dissolved. We might be sitting in a chair or walking to our cars, and we suddenly realize that we have not taken a full diaphragmatic breath in hours. Our breathing is shallow, trapped in the upper chest, as if our lungs are afraid to fully expand into the space we occupy. This is the physiological signature of the second arrow. The first arrow is the reality of the day, the emails, the meetings, the unexpected delays. But the second arrow is the story we tell ourselves about these things. The story that says we are falling behind, that we are not enough, that the world is demanding more than we have to give. That second arrow causes a physical reaction. It triggers the nervous system to release a cocktail of hormones that prepares us for a battle that never happens. We are bracing for impact in a world where the only impact is our own resistance to the present moment. Let us look deeper into this architecture of strain. We have become experts at the art of holding on. We hold on to our opinions as if they were anchors in a storm. We hold on to our past regrets, polishing them like smooth stones until they feel heavy enough to sink us. We hold on to the images of who we think we should be, creating a performative mask that we must constantly adjust and repair. All of this creates a persistent low-grade tension in the neck, the lower back, and the base of the skull. It is the physical weight of an ego that refuses to be still. When we look in the mirror, we are not seeing our own faces, we are seeing a construction of expectations. We see the lines around our eyes and think of stress. We see the slump in our posture and think of failure. We have lost the ability to look at ourselves with the neutral, compassionate gaze of a witness. We are instead the prosecutor, the judge, and the prisoner, all living within the same skin. There is a profound exhaustion that comes from this duality. We spend our energy policing our own thoughts, trying to eliminate the ones that are not productive or positive, and trying to amplify the ones that make us feel like we are in control. It is an impossible, exhausting endeavor. The mind is a vast, wild landscape, and we are trying to force it to behave like a neatly curated park. We wonder why we feel so drained at the end of the day, yet we refuse to see that we have been running a marathon while sitting perfectly still. The energy has been spent not in the movement of our lives, but in the internal friction of fighting against what is happening right now. Think of the way we react to a disruption in our plans. A train is delayed, a colleague is late, a project receives criticism. These events are the first arrows. They are simple, objective facts. But the second arrow follows almost instantaneously. Our internal monologue begins to blame, to worry, and to judge. We feel the blood pressure rise, the stomach tighten, the heart rate accelerate. We feel an overwhelming need to fix the situation immediately, not because it is necessary, but because the discomfort of the wait is too much to bear. We are terrified of the space between the event and our reaction. We have forgotten how to simply inhabit the void of the unknown, so we rush to fill it with frustration. This rush is the primary symptom of our modern suffering. It is a frantic, unthinking motion that disconnects us from our own bodies and keeps us trapped in a cycle of reactivity. We can see this clearly in our relationship to technology. When we feel that momentary pull of boredom, that tiny gap in our sensory input, we immediately reach for our phones to bridge the silence. This is a rejection of the present. It is a refusal to be with ourselves in the raw, unfinished state of being. We are afraid that if we stop, if we disconnect from the external stream of data, we will vanish. We have anchored our sense of self to the digital flow, and when that flow is interrupted, we feel a phantom limb syndrome of the soul. Our hands shake slightly, our focus wavers, and we feel a surge of agitation. This is not a weakness of character, it is a symptom of a disembodied culture. We have outsourced our attention to the machine, and in return, the machine has taught us how to be scattered, how to be anxious, and how to be perpetually dissatisfied. Consider the physical sensation of regret. We hold it in the gut. It is a cold, sinking feeling that acts like a weight, pulling us toward a past that no longer exists. We reenact the scene of our perceived mistake again and again, hoping that this time the outcome will be different. We are literally reliving the neurochemistry of the original event, constantly refreshing the trauma, keeping the nervous system on high alert. This is the anatomy of stagnation. We are frozen in a moment that has already passed, while our physical bodies are left to deal with the consequences of that internal stagnation. We find ourselves unable to move forward because we are still fighting a war that was lost years ago. Conversely, consider the physical sensation of worrying about the future. This is felt in the chest and the breath. It is a tightness, a feeling of being compressed, as if we are trying to fit our entire future into the palm of our hand. We are trying to solve problems that have not yet manifested. We are creating scenarios of disaster and preparing for them with a fervor that borders on the religious. We treat the future as if it were a physical terrain we could map and conquer, ignoring the fact that it is entirely composed of fluid, shifting variables. This constant, forward-leaning posture, the literal leaning in, the squinting of the eyes, the tension in the forward-facing muscles, is the physical expression of a mind that refuses to trust the present. We are, in effect, living in a constant state of internal discord. We are not unified. Our thoughts say one thing, our bodies say another, and our actions often contradict both. We strive for a life of purpose, yet we spend our days in the service of distraction. We desire peace, yet we cultivate the conditions for agitation. We long for connection, yet we build walls of judgment and comparison. This discordance is not a permanent state, it is a habit. A pattern of movement that we have repeated for so long that we have mistaken it for our identity. We have convinced ourselves that we are these patterns. We believe that we are our anxiety, our ambition, our exhaustion, and our regret. We have forgotten the spacious, quiet awareness that exists behind all of these states. To begin the process of unclenching, we must first recognize the sheer physical reality of our imprisonment. We must stop intellectualizing our suffering and start feeling it in the marrow. We must acknowledge that the tightness in our shoulders is not just stress, it is the physical embodiment of our need to control. The clenching of our jaw is not just a nervous habit, it is the physical manifestation of our resistance to the truth. The shallowness of our breath is not just a lack of energy, it is the physical denial of our own vitality. When we begin to feel these sensations without needing to change them, without needing to fix them, we take the first step toward the center. We move from being a victim of our own nervous system to being the observer of it. This observation is the beginning of the end of our fragmentation. It requires a radical honesty that most of us are taught to avoid. We are taught to project an image of competence and strength, and to hide the parts of us that feel weak, scattered, or confused. But this hiding is the very thing that keeps us trapped. The light of consciousness cannot illuminate the parts of us that we keep in the dark. We must be willing to sit with the discomfort of our own scattered energy, to feel the vibration of our own anxiety, and to let it exist without condemnation. We must be willing to say, I am currently feeling scattered, and that is okay. I am currently feeling anxious, and that is okay. The moment we stop fighting the sensation is the moment the sensation begins to lose its grip on us. We are like a prism that has been clogged with dust and debris. We have spent years trying to polish the surface of the prism, trying to make it look brighter and cleaner to the world, without realizing that the problem is not on the surface, it is in the way we allow the light to pass through. The scattering of our focus is a direct result of the barriers we have built inside ourselves. Each judgment is a smudge on the glass. Each resistance is a crack in the frame. Each attachment to a future outcome is a shadow that obscures the path. To reclaim our intention, we do not need to add more things to our lives. We need to subtract the barriers that are already there. We need to clear away the debris of our conditioning so that the light of our own awareness can pass through us, unhindered, and focus into a single, steady beam. As we continue to explore this, we must recognize that the struggle is not against the world. The world will always be chaotic. The world will always be full of noise, distraction, and change. The struggle is against our own inability to remain centered within that chaos. We have been trying to make the world still so that we can be still. We have been trying to rearrange the external so that we can feel internal peace. But peace is not a condition of the environment, it is a condition of the mind. It is the capacity to remain open and spacious, even when the world is pressing in on us from every side. It is the ability to hold our intention in the center of our being, regardless of what is happening on the periphery. There is a profound liberation in realizing that we are not the ones who need to be in control. We are part of a much larger, more intelligent process, and our role is not to command the flow of the river, but to learn how to swim with its current. We have spent so much energy trying to dam the river, trying to force it to go where we want it to go, that we have forgotten the beauty of the water itself. We have forgotten that the river is not our enemy, it is the very essence of our lives. When we stop trying to control the water, when we stop trying to dictate the shape of the river, we find that we can move through the world with a sense of ease and grace that we never thought possible. This transition from control to trust is the essence of our journey. It is a slow, gradual process, not a sudden transformation. It requires the patience of a mountain and the fluidity of the sea. It requires us to show up day after day and to practice the art of coming back to the center. It requires us to be gentle with ourselves when we fall back into our old habits, and to be courageous enough to continue even when the path is not clear. We are the architects of our own internal landscape, and we are finally learning how to build a life that is not just efficient but meaningful, not just productive but present, and not just full of noise but full of a deep, resonant silence. As we move toward the next stage of our understanding, we must hold on to this simple, radical idea. The only thing we truly have is this single moment of attention. Everything else is a projection, a memory, or an expectation. When we focus our intention on this moment, the scatter begins to subside. When we focus our attention on the breath, the body begins to soften. When we focus our attention on the truth, the illusions begin to dissolve. We are not just fixing our focus, we are awakening to the possibility of a life that is fully, deeply, and undeniably ours. We are beginning to see that the geometry of our intention is not a prison, but a path. It is the path back to the only place we have ever really been. Here now, in the stillness of our own existence, we must also be willing to examine the source of our persistent need for external validation. Why do we feel the need to be seen, to be heard, to be validated by the collective? This is another layer of our fragmentation. We have built our sense of worth on the sands of other people's opinions, which are by definition impermanent and shifting. We are trying to build an identity out of smoke. We think that if we get enough likes, enough approval, enough recognition, we will finally be whole. But wholeness is not something we can receive from others. It is something we must discover within ourselves. When we look to the outside for our worth, we are essentially handing over the keys to our own happiness. We are allowing the world to dictate our internal state. And as long as we do that, we will always be at the mercy of the changing tides. The anatomy of this validation seeking is fascinating. It creates a constant state of hypervigilance. We are always scanning the environment for cues, always adjusting our behavior to fit the perceived expectations of those around us. It is like living in a hall of mirrors where we are constantly checking to see if our reflection is acceptable. We are never fully ourselves because we are always partially focused on how we are being perceived. This split focus is inherently draining. It is the psychological equivalent of trying to drive a car while looking only in the rear-view mirror. We are so concerned with what has been or what others think is happening that we miss the road unfolding right in front of us. When we finally decide to withdraw our attention from this external feedback loop, we encounter a temporary state of profound insecurity. For a while, we may feel invisible. We may feel that if we are not constantly broadcasting our presence, we might cease to exist. This is a common and necessary phase of the transition. It is the ego's way of fighting for its relevance. It is the sound of the old patterns attempting to regain control. But if we stay with it, if we continue to observe this insecurity without acting on it, we will find that something else begins to emerge in the silence. It is a quiet, steady, and unshakable sense of being. It is not the loud, performative identity of the past, but a deep, authentic presence that does not need to be validated by anyone. This is the shift from being a performer to being a witness. As a performer, we are constantly on stage, worried about the audience, the critique, and the performance. As a witness, we are the ones watching the play of life unfold, recognizing that it is all part of a larger natural order. We recognize that our roles are transient, that our successes and failures are like ripples on the surface of a pond, and that the water itself remains untouched. We start to see that our true nature is not the role we play, but the awareness that observes the performance. This shift changes everything. It changes our relationship to work, to relationships, and to ourselves. It turns the struggle for validation into an act of creation, where we do things not because we need to be seen, but because we are expressing the truth of our own being. Consider the metaphor of the musician. When a musician is truly in the zone, they are not thinking about the audience's reaction, or the prestige of the performance, or the critique of the critics. They are completely absorbed in the music itself. They are the music. The separation between the player, the instrument, and the sound dissolves. This is the state of total undivided attention. It is the state of flow. We can bring this same quality to our lives. We can treat our work, our conversations, and even the simple act of breathing as a form of music. We can approach our daily existence as a practice of presence, where the goal is not the outcome, but the quality of the engagement. When we move from the need for validation to the joy of expression, we find that our energy is no longer being wasted. We are no longer leaking our focus in 1,000 different directions. We are channeling it, like a river directed into a turbine, creating energy rather than consuming it. We become more effective, more creative, and more resilient. Not because we are trying harder, but because we are working with the grain of reality rather than against it. We stop being the architects of our own stress and start being the custodians of our own peace. This is not to say that we stop caring about the world or about other people. On the contrary, when we are centered in ourselves, our capacity for genuine care increases dramatically. When we are not burdened by our own internal dramas, when we are not constantly needing validation, we have the space to see others with clarity. We can listen to them without the noise of our own projections. We can respond to their needs without being caught up in our own insecurities. We become a source of stability in an unstable world. We become a bridge between the chaos of the noise and the depth of the silence. The geometry of our intention is therefore not just about personal development, it is about social responsibility. Every person who learns to center their attention, who learns to let go of the need for control, who learns to inhabit the present moment with integrity, is a ripple of calm in a world that is spinning out of control. We are part of a collective consciousness, and the way we organize our own internal landscape affects the whole. We are influencing the field around us. We are setting a tone. When we show up as beings who are present, unburdened and clear, we give others permission to do the same. We offer them a mirror that does not reflect their own chaos, but reflects their own inherent potential for peace. As we continue to walk this path, we must remember that the distractions will never cease. The notifications will continue to buzz. The world will continue to demand our attention, and the old patterns of reactivity will continue to arise. The challenge is not to eliminate these things, but to change our relationship to them. It is to recognize that they are not the masters of our focus, but merely the background of our experience. We are the masters. We are the ones who decide where to place our attention, and we are the ones who decide whether to be pulled into the scatter or to remain in the center. We are beginning to see the outline of a new way of living. It is a life that is defined not by how much we can accumulate or how much we can control, but by how deeply we can be present. It is a life that is not measured by the speed of our progress, but by the depth of our awareness. It is a life that is not haunted by the ghosts of the past or the shadows of the future, but is anchored firmly in the vibrant, unfolding reality of the present. This is the geometry of intention, and it is a map that leads home. There is a final aspect of this architecture to consider, and that is the role of surrender. We have spoken of focus, of discipline, and of awareness, but there is a point where all of these things must meet the profound act of letting go. We must learn to surrender our need for a perfect outcome. We must learn to surrender our need to know how the story will end. We must learn to surrender the very idea that we are the ones who need to hold the world together. When we do this, we find that the world continues to turn, the sun continues to rise, and we are still here, held in the cradle of the present. We find that the true power is not in holding on, but in the willingness to let go. The weight that we feel in our shoulders, the clenching in our jaws, the shallow breathal of it begins to dissolve when we truly surrender. It is not a passive surrender, not a giving up, but an active, courageous letting go of the resistance to the flow of life. It is an act of trust. It is the realization that we are a part of a vast, intelligent, and evolving process, and that we are safe even when we are not in control. This is the final piece of our geometry. When we align our intention with the truth of our nature, the prism clears, the light focuses, and we are finally fully at home in our own skin. We are standing at the threshold of a new way of being. We are ready to move from the fragmented, scattered geometry of our conditioning into the unified, luminous, and spacious reality of our true nature. We are ready to stop being the mirror that reflects the chaos and start being the prism that focuses the light. We are ready to reclaim our attention, to master our own intention, and to live with a clarity that can withstand the storms of the modern world. The path is open, the space is ready, and the choice is ours to make, in every moment as we move forward into the light of our own awareness. We have spent our entire lives trying to build a fortress, a solid, impermeable self that could survive the onslaught of change. We have used our intelligence as the bricks and our willpower as the mortar, stacking our beliefs, our achievements, and our possessions into a high wall around the garden of our inner life. But the more we built, the more we realized that the wall was not protecting us, it was isolating us. It was keeping out the very air and light we needed to grow. It was creating a stagnant, suffocating environment where our fears, our anxieties, and our delusions were left to fester in the dark. We were living in a fortress, yet we felt more vulnerable than ever. The anatomy of this fortress is complex. It is held together by the constant maintenance of our image. We have to keep painting the walls, keep strengthening the ramparts, and keep guard against any information that contradicts the reality we have carefully constructed. This is why we feel so threatened by opposing views, why we feel so destabilized by criticism, and why we feel so diminished when our plans fail. Our identity has become synonymous with the structure of the fortress. If the fortress falls, we feel that we will cease to exist. This is the deepest, most pervasive illusion we carry. It is the fear of non-existence, the fear of the void, and it drives the entirety of our defensive behavior. But what if the fortress was never necessary? What if the structure we have been so desperately trying to protect is the very thing that is causing our suffering? What if we were to let the walls fall, not because we are defeated, but because we are ready to live under the open sky? This is the core of the transformation we are exploring. It is not about destroying the self. It is about realizing that there is no solid, separate self to destroy. There is only the flowing, changing, and interconnected reality of existence. We are not the fortress, we are the space that contains the fortress. And the space itself is not threatened by change. It is not destroyed by the falling of the walls. It is simply eternally there. When we begin to see this, the tension in our bodies begins to change. It is no longer the tension of bracing for impact. It is the tension of preparation, the tension of a bowstring pulled back, ready to release an arrow of intention. The anxiety that we once felt as a tightening in the chest becomes a form of energy, a kinetic force that can be directed toward a purpose. The fear that we once felt as a threat to our existence becomes an invitation to explore the unknown. We stop being the guardians of a static, fragile identity and start being the explorers of a vast, dynamic reality. We begin to notice that when we stop defending, we start listening. We begin to hear the subtleties of the world around us, the rhythms of the environment, the needs of the people we interact with, and the promptings of our own intuition. We stop being the center of a self-referential loop and become part of a larger collective conversation. This is a profound shift in our internal landscape. We move from a state of contraction to a state of expansion. We move from a state of scarcity, where we feel we must fight for every resource and every scrap of validation, to a state of abundance, where we realize that our worth is an inherent, unchangeable quality of our existence. We can see the evidence of this in the way we interact with others. When we are not defending our fortress, we are no longer looking for ways to diminish others to boost our own standing. We are no longer competing for status, for recognition, or for the last word. We are interested in connection, in understanding, and in collaboration. We find that our relationships become deeper, more honest, and more fulfilling. We are no longer projecting our own needs onto others. We are meeting them exactly where they are. We become a source of strength, not because we have all the answers, but because we have the courage to be present with the questions. This is the geometry of grace. It is the way our lives organize themselves when we stop trying to dictate the outcome. It is the way our focus naturally settles on what is most meaningful, most true, and most necessary. It is the way our energy naturally flows toward healing, toward creativity, and toward service. It is a beautiful, intuitive, and highly efficient way of living. It is the path of the sage, the path of the artist, and the path of the human being who has finally learned how to live in alignment with the truth of their own heart. As we move toward the culmination of this exploration, we must remember that the path is never finished. We do not reach a state of perfection and then stop. We continue to learn, to grow, and to refine our intention. The challenges will continue to arise. The noise will continue to fill the air, and the temptation to return to the fortress will always be there. But we now have the tools to navigate this. We have the practice of return, the practice of presence, and the practice of letting go. We have the awareness that we are the ones who are in charge of the direction of our focus, and we have the commitment to use that focus for the good of all beings. We are, in essence, becoming the architects of our own peace. We are building a life that is not a fortress, but a sanctuary. It is a space where we can rest, where we can reflect, and where we can recharge. It is a space that is open to the world, yet grounded in the truth. It is a space where we can be ourselves, in all our complexity, all our fragility, and all our strength. And from this sanctuary, we can go out into the world and offer our presence, our clarity, and our compassion. We can be the ones who help others to find their own center, who help them to let go of their own fortresses, and who help them to discover the truth of their own nature. This is the deepest, most meaningful work we can do. It is the work of a lifetime, and it is the work of this very moment. We are not doing it for a future reward. We are doing it because it is the most honest, the most alive, and the most fulfilling way to exist. We are doing it because we are part of the whole, and when we heal ourselves, we contribute to the healing of the world. We are moving toward a future that is not defined by our past, but by our capacity to be present, to be aware, and to be intentional, here and now, in the stillness of our own existence. We realize that the geometry we have been exploring is not about geometry at all. It is about love. It is about the love of truth, the love of the present, and the love of the unfolding mystery of our own existence. When we align our intention with this love, the world transforms. The noise becomes music. The chaos becomes dance. The struggle becomes a flow. We are no longer the ones who are suffering. We are the ones who are present. And in that presence, there is everything we have ever been looking for. The journey is not out there. The journey is right here, beneath the skin, in the breath, and in the quiet, steady beat of the heart that knows without a doubt that it is exactly where it needs to be. We stand now at the precipice of the most difficult realization of all, the one that requires us to look directly into the fire we have been feeding with our own hands. We have spoken of the way we scatter our focus, the way we clench our bodies in defense against a future that has not yet arrived, and the way we cling to the fragments of a self that was never truly solid to begin with. But now, we must address the mechanism that turns this simple existence into a source of enduring friction. The habit of the second arrow. We are well acquainted with the first arrow. It is the sting of the world, the loss of a job, the sting of a sharp word, the sudden change in our fortunes, the ache of the body. These are the inevitable realities of a life that is governed by change. They are the arrows that fly from the bow of the universe, and we cannot always dodge them. But the second arrow is the one we shoot ourselves, over and over, in the privacy of our own minds. It is the story we weave around the first arrow. It is the judgment, the self-pity, the demand that reality should have been different, and the crushing weight of the question, why me? The second arrow is the primary architect of our misery. It is the psychological reaction that transforms a moment of pain into a lifetime of suffering. When the first arrow strikes, we feel the pain, and that is natural. But the second arrow is an act of defiance against reality. We tell ourselves that this pain is unfair, that we are being singled out, that our entire project of self-optimization has failed. We spiral into a narrative of deficiency, and in doing so, we double the weight of the experience. We are no longer dealing with the initial event, we are dealing with our resistance to it. We are fighting a phantom, and because the phantom is a creature of our own making, it is impossible to defeat. We only succeed in exhausting ourselves further, deepening the grooves of our habitual reaction until they feel like a prison. This is where the ancient wisdom pierces through the confusion. To stop the second arrow is not to stop the first. We do not become stone, we do not become immune to the sting of life. Instead, we become the ones who refuse to compound the hurt. We recognize that the initial event is enough. We recognize that adding a layer of narrative, a layer of blame, or a layer of despair only complicates the healing. Imagine for a moment that you are walking through a forest and you are scratched by a thorn. The first arrow is the scratch itself. It is a biological reality. The blood is real, the sting is real, but the second arrow is the hour you spend cursing the tree, cursing the path, and cursing your own clumsiness. You are still standing in the same forest. You are still nursing the same scratch. But now you are also suffering from the poison of your own resentment. You have turned a minor injury into an internal war. This internal war is what keeps us trapped in the cycle of fragmentation. We are so busy defending our narrative of how life should be that we never actually live the life that is. We are like actors who have forgotten that we are on a stage, and we have become so invested in our character's suffering that we have lost the ability to step back and see the play. When we feel that sharp sensation of being triggered, the tightening of the chest, the sudden rush of heat to the face, the impulse to attack or to hide, that is the exact moment the second arrow is released. It is a moment of profound significance. If we can pause, even for the duration of a single breath, we can catch the arrow in midair. We can see it for what it is. A movement of the mind, a flicker of conditioned habit, not of fundamental truth. Consider the concept of the self that we guard so fiercely. We believe in a core, solid entity that needs to be protected, polished, and presented. We treat the self as if it were a fragile porcelain vessel that could shatter at any moment. But if we were to examine this self under the lens of direct observation, we would find nothing of the sort. We would find a collection of memories, sensations, beliefs, and reactions, all of which are in constant flux. We are not a static object, we are a process, we are a river, and just as you cannot step into the same river twice, you cannot be the same self twice. Every thought, every feeling, every encounter changes the composition of the stream. This realization is the ultimate liberation. If there is no solid self to protect, then there is nothing that can be diminished by the arrows of the world. When we let go of the need to maintain this solid self, the second arrow loses its target. If there is no permanent, unchanging self, then there is no one who is truly offended, no one who is truly failing, and no one who is truly being left behind. There is only the play of life, the rising and falling of experiences, and the spacious awareness that observes it all. This is the radical freedom of the empty space. It is the peace that passeth understanding, because it does not depend on the state of the world. It depends on our ability to reside in the truth of our own nature, which is wide, open, and incapable of being wounded. We must also confront the way we use our intellectual obsession as a defense mechanism against this truth. We love to analyze, to categorize, to deconstruct, and to solve. We think that if we can just figure out the anatomy of our suffering, we will be able to transcend it. But analysis is not the same as realization. We can spend years studying the nature of the mind and still remain trapped in the cycle of the second arrow. True transformation requires more than an intellectual grasp. It requires an embodiment of the truth. It requires us to feel the discomfort of the second arrow and, instead of rushing to explain it away, simply to sit with it until it dissolves of its own accord. This is the practice of patience. We have been taught that everything should be immediate, that our progress should be linear, and that our transformation should be visible to others. But the work of the heart is slow. It happens in the quiet corners of our days, in the moments when we choose to breathe instead of reacting, when we choose to observe instead of judging, and when we choose to accept instead of grasping. It is in these small, repetitive acts of surrender that we build our internal architecture. We are essentially recalibrating our nervous system to respond to the world not from a place of fear, but from a place of grounded, spacious awareness. We can see the progress of this transformation in the way we handle the small disruptions of our day, the traffic jam, the misunderstood email, the sudden change in weather. These things no longer trigger the same cascade of reactive stories. We feel the initial sting, the first arrow, but we notice it with a kind of detachment. We recognize the sensation as a passing weather pattern in our internal landscape. We do not take it personally. We do not feel the need to build a monument to our frustration. We simply allow the sensation to pass, like clouds drifting across an infinite sky. The sky is not affected by the clouds. The sky does not hold on to them. The sky does not judge them as good or bad. It simply lets them be. This state of sky-like awareness is our natural inheritance. We have been taught to identify with the clouds, the fleeting thoughts, the passing moods, the temporary reactions, but we are the sky. We are the spaciousness that allows all things to arise and subside. When we anchor our attention in this fundamental spaciousness, we are no longer victims of our own conditioning. We are the observers of our conditioning, and in that observation, there is the possibility of change. We can see the habit of the second arrow rising, and we can choose not to join it. We can witness the impulse to be angry, the impulse to be self-critical, and we can choose to let it pass through us without taking root. This is the true meaning of being the master of our own attention. It is not about controlling the contents of the mind, but about changing our relationship to the contents of the mind. We are the keepers of the gate, and we decide which thoughts are allowed to take up residence in our inner sanctuary. We do not deny the thoughts, we acknowledge them. We hold them with kindness, and then we let them go. We do not allow them to become the narrative of our lives. We do not allow them to dictate our worth, our mood, or our actions. We are the silent center of the storm, and that center is unshakable. As we deepen this practice, we find that our internal landscape begins to settle. The frantic, high-frequency hum of our daily existence begins to give way to a deeper, more resonant quiet. We find that we are more present in our conversations, more attentive in our work, and more alive in our moments of rest. We are no longer living in the anticipation of the next moment. We are living in the fullness of this one. And in this fullness, we discover that there is a joy that does not come from achievement, but from the simple, unadorned experience of being alive. This joy is not dependent on circumstances. It is a fountain that springs from the depths of our own nature. This is the promise of the path. It is not a path of withdrawal from the world, but a path of deeper, more meaningful engagement with it. When we are centered, we are more effective, more creative, and more capable of genuine connection. We are not holding back. We are showing up with our full, unfragmented presence. We are giving the world the best of ourselves, not because we are trying to prove our worth, but because we are expressing the truth of our being. We are moving from the struggle of the individual self to the participation of the universal. And in that transition, we find the relief of having nothing to defend and everything to share. We must also be careful not to mistake this state of peace for a state of apathy. It is not a numbing of the senses or a withdrawal into indifference. On the contrary, it is an awakening of the senses. It is a heightening of our sensitivity to the truth of things. We see the pain of the world more clearly, and because we are not caught up in our own dramas, we are better able to respond with compassion. We recognize that everyone we meet is also fighting their own battles, that everyone is also struggling with their own second arrows. This recognition breeds a natural empathy. We stop judging and start serving. We stop trying to change people and start trying to understand them. This empathy is the final piece of the puzzle. It is the bridge between our own inner peace and the peace of the world. When we see ourselves in others, when we see that we are all part of the same vast, shifting, and interconnected process, the barrier of the separate self falls away. We are no longer two, no longer separate. We are one, and in that oneness, there is no place for the second arrow. There is no one to blame. no one to judge, and no one to carry the burden of the past. There is only the present, which is always already enough. As we continue to walk this path, we may find that our old habits attempt to resurface. The impulse to judge, the desire to control, the tendency to spiral into the narrative of the second arrow, all of these are deeply ingrained patterns. They will not disappear overnight. But this is not a failure, it is an opportunity. Every time we catch ourselves in the act, every time we choose to pause, every time we choose to return to the breath and to the center, we are strengthening the muscle of our awareness. We are rewriting the neural pathways of our existence. We are choosing a new way of living, one moment at a time. This is the work. It is the work of a lifetime. And it is the only work that truly matters. It is the work of becoming the human beings we were meant to be. It is the work of waking up from the dream of the self-constructed cage. And as we continue, we will find that the cage was never locked. The door was always open. We only needed to stop leaning against it, to stop pushing against the reality of our own freedom, and to simply courageously walk out into the open sky. We are the architects of our own lives, and we are finally building something that can endure, not by creating a fortress, but by becoming the space that allows everything to be exactly as it is in the beautiful unfolding and perfect mystery of this present moment. Consider the metaphor of the ocean. The surface of the ocean can be whipped into a fury by the storms. The waves can be high, the water can be turbulent, and the spray can be blinding. If you identify with the surface, you are constantly tossed about, always in a state of chaos, always trying to regain your balance. But if you dive down, beneath the surface, you find that the water is still. The depth remains untouched by the storm. The ocean does not stop being the ocean. Because there is a storm on the surface, it simply contains the storm. We are the depth. We are the ocean, not the wave. And when we live from the depth, we can encounter any storm, any challenge, and any pain, and remain unshakable. We can hold the intensity of the experience without being destroyed by it. We can be the witness to our own lives, and in that witness, we find the absolute freedom of the heart. This depth is not something we have to create. It is something we have to uncover. It is always there, waiting beneath the noise of the mind. It is the stillness in the center of the movement. It is the silence that allows the sound to be heard. It is the awareness that observes the thoughts, the feelings, and the sensations. And the more we reside in this awareness, the more it expands, until it encompasses everything. It becomes our primary identity. We no longer define ourselves by our achievements, our problems, or our stories. We define ourselves by the awareness that contains all these things. And in that definition, we are free. The journey toward this depth is not about avoiding the storm. It is about learning how to be the ocean. It is about learning how to integrate the experience of the storm into our own being. It is about realizing that the storm is also part of the ocean, and that even the most turbulent wave is still made of water. This is the ultimate integration. It is the realization that everything that happens to us, everything that we encounter, and everything that we feel is part of the unfolding of our lives, and that none of it is separate from the truth of our nature. When we embrace this, the second arrow has nowhere to land. There is no one to hit, because there is no one who is separate from the storm. We move now into a deeper understanding of our own potential. We are not just beings who survive. We are beings who evolve. We are beings who have the capacity to recognize our own conditioning and to transcend it. We are beings who have the capacity to love, to understand, and to create. This is our true nature. This is the brilliance that resides in the center of our being, waiting for us to stop obstructing it with our own attachments and our own resistances. When we stop getting in our own way, the light of our awareness naturally shines through. It illuminates our path, it clarifies our intention, and it transforms our actions into expressions of our deepest, most authentic selves. As we move toward the final stages of our exploration, we must remember that this is a practice of devotion. It is a devotion to the truth, a devotion to the present, and a devotion to the unfolding of our own lives. It requires us to show up with an open heart, with a curious mind, and with a commitment to be as honest as we can possibly be. It requires us to let go of our expectations of how the process should look, and to trust the process itself. It requires us to be gentle with ourselves when we falter, and to be courageous when we find the strength to continue. And most importantly, it requires us to trust that we are supported by the very nature of existence. We are not alone in this journey. We are part of a lineage of seekers who have asked the same questions, who have struggled with the same second arrows, and who have found the same quiet truth. We are part of the vast, interconnected tapestry of human experience, and our struggle is the struggle of all. When we find peace, we add to the peace of the world. When we find clarity, we add to the clarity of the collective. When we find love, we add to the love that sustains us all. We are not just working for ourselves, we are working for the benefit of all beings, and in that, we find a sense of purpose that transcends the small, fragile self. The path is clear, the truth is simple. The only thing that stands between us and the life we long for is our own resistance. And the only thing we need to do to overcome that resistance is to stop fighting, to stop holding on, and to surrender to the truth of this moment. It is the most challenging thing we will ever do, and it is the most rewarding. It is the act of coming home to ourselves. And in that homecoming, we find that we have never really left. We are already there. We have always been there. We are the space, we are the light, and we are the silence. We are the realization of everything we have been looking for, and we are now ready to live from that truth, fully, deeply, and without reservation. As we breathe into this realization, let us recognize the immense power of our own intention. We have the ability to steer our awareness toward the truth, to anchor our presence in the now, and to let go of the stories that have kept us small. We have the ability to transform the friction of our lives into the fuel for our own evolution. We have the ability to become the architects of a peace that is not fragile, but foundational. We have the ability to live a life that is not defined by our circumstances, but by our capacity to encounter them with grace. This is the beauty of our human existence. We are the bridge between the limited and the limitless, the temporary and the eternal, the conditioned and the unconditioned. We are the ones who can walk both worlds, and in that walking, we find the harmony of our being. We are the ones who can hold the pain of the world in one hand and the joy of the present in the other, and see that they are both expressions of the same magnificent mystery. We are the ones who have finally learned how to be, and in that being, we have found the only answer that ever mattered. The stillness that follows the realization is not empty. It is pregnant with possibility. It is the space from which everything arises, and it is the space to which everything returns. When we dwell in this stillness, we are no longer rushing toward a conclusion. We are no longer trying to force the river to move faster. We are simply present, watching the unfolding of our own life with the eyes of a lover. We are participating in the dance, and we are also the silence that allows the music to be played. We are the experience, and we are the experiencer, and there is no division between the two. This is the state of total integration. It is the state where the inner and the outer are one. It is the state where our actions are a direct manifestation of our awareness, and where our awareness is nourished by our actions. It is the state where the second arrow has no power, because there is no one left to hit. There is only the flow of experience, and there is only the spaciousness that allows it all to be. And in this flow, we find that we are safe, we are whole, and we are home. We have arrived at the threshold of our own potential. We are no longer the victims of our own minds. We are no longer the servants of our own conditioning. We are the masters of our own presence, and we are ready to step into the life that is waiting for us. It is a life of integrity, a life of purpose, and a life of profound, unshakable peace. It is the life we were meant to live from the very beginning, and it is the life that we are now choosing, moment by moment, with every breath we take. As we prepare to integrate this understanding into the fabric of our daily lives, let us hold this truth in the center of our being. We are not the problems we are trying to solve. We are the awareness that is solving them. We are not the stories we are telling about ourselves. We are the consciousness that is telling them. We are not the second arrows we have been shooting. We are the ones who have finally, mercifully, put down the bow, and in the silence that follows, we are finally, truly free. This freedom is not a distant goal. It is not something we earn through effort. It is something we choose by relaxing into the truth of who we are. It is something we find when we stop trying to become someone else and start being who we already are. It is the simplicity of the truth, and it is the depth of the heart. It is the end of the search, and it is the beginning of the journey. And as we continue to walk this path, we will find that it opens into a horizon that is truly, beautifully, and infinitely vast. We must remember that the path is not a straight line. It is a spiral, and we may find ourselves returning to the same lessons again and again. But each time we return, we do so with a deeper understanding, a greater perspective, and a more profound commitment. We are not going in circles, we are moving up toward a higher level of awareness, a deeper level of integration, and a more expansive level of freedom. And with each rotation, the second arrow loses its sting, the fortress loses its walls, and the heart loses its fear. This is the process of our growth. It is a process of shedding the layers of conditioning that have obscured our true nature. It is a process of remembering who we were before the world told us who to be. It is a process of reclaiming our own sovereignty, and it is a process of returning to the truth. We are doing this work not just for ourselves, but for all those who are still caught in the struggle, for all those who are still shooting their second arrows, and for all those who are still waiting for the freedom that is their birthright. We are the pioneers of this new way of being. We are the ones who are demonstrating that peace is possible, that awareness is transformative, and that the truth is the most powerful force in the universe. We are the ones who are showing the world that there is another way to live, a way that is grounded in the reality of the present and anchored in the depth of the heart. And as we continue to walk this path, we will find that we are not alone. We are joined by the wisdom of the ages, and we are sustained by the depth of our own being. Let us commit to this work with all that we are. Let us commit to the practice of presence, the practice of kindness, and the practice of truth. Let us commit to the dissolution of the self-constructed cage, and let us commit to the reclamation of our own boundless potential. Let us commit to the life that is calling us, the life that is already here, and the life that is waiting to be lived. And let us walk this path together with an open heart, a clear mind, and an unwavering commitment to the truth of our own existence. The journey continues, but the search is over. We have found what we were looking for, not in the external, but in the internal. Not in the future, but in the present. Not in the performance, but in the presence. We have found the truth of our own nature, and we are ready to live from that truth, fully, deeply, and without reservation. We are the architects of our own peace, and we are ready to begin the work of our lives. The silence that now fills the space between us is not an absence. It is a presence. It is the presence of the truth, and it is the presence of the peace that we have been cultivating together. It is a reminder that we are always connected, always supported, and always home. And as we carry this silence into our daily lives, let us remember that it is the source of all our strength, the foundation of all our actions, and the home of all our being. We are ready to move forward. We are ready to embrace the life that is unfolding before us, with all its challenges, all its beauty, and all its mystery. We are ready to be the architects of our own joy, and we are ready to be the witnesses to the unfolding of the truth. We are ready to live fully and completely in the light of our own awareness, here and now. Forevermore, we have arrived at the threshold of the practical application, the place where the abstract wisdom of the path meets the concrete reality of our daily lives. To move from understanding to transformation, we must approach our own minds as a craftsman approaches a block of raw stone. We are not trying to impose a shape upon it. From the outside, we are trying to chip away everything that is not already the masterpiece hidden within. This requires a specific kind of internal architecture, a set of habits that, when practiced with persistence, begin to alter the very foundations of our experience. We begin by reclaiming our attention, the most precious resource we possess. In a world that is designed to steal it from us, the act of reclaiming it is a revolutionary move. The first step in this architecture is the establishment of a regular, unshakable rhythm of presence. We are used to living in a state of reaction, our attention always pointed outward toward the next notification, the next problem, the next obligation. We must learn to reverse this flow. We do this by creating small, intentional gaps in our day, where we do nothing but observe the current state of our own being. We sit, or we stand, or we walk, and we bring our full attention to the sensation of our breath. We do not try to change the breath, we do not try to make it deeper or slower. We simply observe it as it is. We feel the air entering our nostrils, the expansion of the chest, the subtle contraction of the abdomen. This is the foundation. It is the practice of rooting ourselves in the present moment, which is the only place where true transformation can occur. As we hold this focus, we will inevitably feel the pull of the scattered mind. We will feel the urge to think about the past, the urge to solve a problem, the urge to check the phone, the urge to return to the familiar comfort of our anxieties. This is not a failure, this is the nature of the mind. It is a wild, untamed creature that has been trained to run in 1,000 directions. Our practice is not to punish the mind for wandering, but to gently, firmly, and repeatedly bring it back to the breath. Each time we notice that we have wandered, and each time we choose to return, we are building the muscle of our awareness. We are teaching our minds that they are not the masters we are. This is the practice of single-pointedness, and it is the key to mastering the geometry of our intention. As we deepen this practice, we begin to notice the subtle ways we have been habitually tightening our bodies in response to the world. We look for the tension in the jaw, the shoulders, the solar plexus, and the base of the skull. We do not judge this tension, we simply shine the light of our awareness upon it. We breathe into these areas, allowing the breath to act as a softening agent. We learn that we can consciously choose to release the grip we have on our own physical existence. This is the practice of surrender in the body. When we soften the body, the mind naturally follows. The rigid, defensive posture of the fortress gives way to the open, receptive posture of the sanctuary. We learn that we are safe, even when we are not holding on. Next, we must learn to work with the second arrow. This is the practice of witnessing our own narratives. Throughout the day, we observe the moments when we feel the sting of the first arrow, the frustration of a missed deadline, the ache of a misunderstood message, the irritation of a long delay. In those moments we pause. We watch the mind as it begins to construct the story of why this is unfair, why we are failing, why we are suffering. We watch the narrative unfold as if it were a movie playing on a screen. We do not need to believe the story. We do not need to act on it. We simply observe it. We see the way the mind tries to justify the suffering, the way it seeks to blame the external world for our internal state. By observing the narrative, we strip it of its power. We realize that it is just a story, and stories are not reality. This practice of witnessing is the most effective way to break the cycle of the second arrow. It requires a profound, radical honesty. We must be willing to see ourselves clearly, without the filter of our own self-justification. We must be willing to admit when we are playing the victim, when we are seeking validation, and when we are trying to control the uncontrollable. This honesty is not an act of self-judgment, it is an act of liberation. It is the recognition that we are not our thoughts, and we are not our reactions. We are the awareness that allows these things to occur. When we realize this, the second arrow has nowhere to land. There is no one who is truly wounded, because there is no one who is truly identified with the story of the wound. We then integrate this into our social lives. We bring this presence into our interactions with others. We practice the art of deep, undivided listening. Instead of formulating our response while the other person is still speaking, we listen with our entire being. We listen not just to the words, but to the emotion, the intent, and the unspoken needs of the other person. We listen without judgment, without the need to correct, and without the need to impose our own narrative. When we listen in this way, we create a space of safety and understanding. We become a mirror that reflects the best in others, and in doing so, we foster a deep, authentic connection that is rarely found in our distracted world. This is the practice of compassion. It is the recognition that everyone we meet is also struggling with their own second arrows, and that we are all, in our own way, trying to find our way home. We also bring this presence into our work. We treat our tasks not as chores to be completed as quickly as possible, but as opportunities for practice. We bring the same quality of attention to the simple act of writing an email, organizing a document, or cleaning our workspace. We become fully absorbed in the task. We do not look for the next thing, we are fully present in this one. We find that when we work in this state, our work becomes an expression of our own internal clarity. We are more efficient, more creative, and more resilient. We are not working to achieve. We are working to express. We are not working to become something. We are working from the fullness of who we are. This architecture of practice requires a high degree of discipline. It is not something we can do occasionally when we feel like it. It must become the fabric of our days. We must commit to this practice as if our lives depended on it, because in a very real sense, they do. We are essentially reclaiming our lives from the automated, conditioned responses that have been running the show for years. We are taking the steering wheel of our own consciousness. We are becoming the architects of our own experience. And this is the most demanding and most rewarding project we will ever undertake. As we continue, we will face periods of resistance. The ego will not give up its control without a fight. We will feel the pull of the old, scattered, anxious ways of being. We will feel the urge to return to the comfort of our distractions. We will feel the temptation to believe the stories of our own inadequacy or our own importance. These are the moments that test our resolve. These are the moments when we must double down on our practice. We must be gentle with ourselves, but we must also be firm in our commitment. We must remember that the resistance is not a sign that we are on the wrong path, it is a sign that we are close to the truth. The ego only fights hardest when it knows that its days are numbered. To support this transition, we create a supportive environment. We cultivate relationships with people who are also on the path of presence. We create spaces in our homes that are conducive to stillness and reflection. We choose the information we consume with intention, avoiding the noise and the agitation of the media and the digital world. We treat our attention as a sacred resource, and we protect it with the same care that we would protect our physical health. We are essentially curating our own ecosystem to support the growth of our own inner peace. We must also learn to work with the inevitable failures and setbacks of our practice. There will be days when we feel like we are moving backward, when we feel caught in the cycle of the second arrow, when we feel scattered, anxious, and lost. We must learn to meet these moments with profound, self-compassionate patience. We must remember that this is a practice, not a destination. We are not trying to reach a state of perfection, we are trying to develop the capacity to return to the center. Each time we fall, and each time we get back up, we are becoming stronger, more resilient, and more deeply grounded in the truth of our nature. We find that our relationship with our own internal voices begins to change. The inner critic, that voice that constantly judges us for our mistakes and compares us to others, begins to lose its authority. We see it for what it is: conditioned pattern of fear, a remnant of a past that no longer serves us. We stop feeding it with our belief. We stop trying to argue with it, because we know that argument is just another way of acknowledging its power. Instead, we simply notice it, smile at its persistence, and return our attention to the breath. We learn to replace the voice of the critic with the voice of the witness, a voice that is calm, objective, and inherently compassionate. This witness is our own true self. It is the awareness that is always there, beneath the noise of the mind. It is the part of us that is untouched by the changing tides of the world. And the more we dwell in this awareness, the more it expands until it becomes our primary identity. We no longer see ourselves as the small, fragile ego that needs to be defended, but as the spacious, eternal presence that allows all experience to arise and subside. This is the ultimate realization. It is the shift from being the character in the play to being the one who is watching the performance. As we move deeper, we begin to appreciate the beauty of the impermanent. We stop trying to freeze the moment, to hold on to the joy, or to push away the pain. We see that the beauty of life is precisely in its transience. A flower is beautiful because it blooms and it fades. A conversation is beautiful because it happens and then it passes. A life is beautiful because it is a finite journey. When we accept the impermanence of all things, we stop grasping, and in that cessation of grasp, we find a peace that is deep, wide, and unshakable. We are no longer trying to build a fortress that will last forever. We are living in the flow of existence, and that is enough. We begin to see the interconnectedness of all things. We realize that we are not separate, isolated entities, but parts of a vast, interdependent web. We see that our actions ripple out into the world, and that we are in turn influenced by the world. We see that the boundaries we have drawn between ourselves and others are illusions, and in this realization, we find a profound, natural, and effortless compassion. We see that the suffering of others is our own suffering, and that the joy of others is our own joy. We stop living for ourselves and start living for the whole, and in that, we find a sense of meaning that transcends our own personal ambitions. We practice the art of gratitude. We see that every moment, every experience, and every encounter is a gift. We are grateful for the challenges because they test us and make us stronger. We are grateful for the joys because they remind us of the beauty of existence. We are grateful for the stillness because it allows us to see the truth. We are grateful for the practice because it is the vehicle of our transformation. We are grateful for the journey because it is the way we find our way home to our own hearts. We learn the value of silence. We realize that silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of the truth. We seek out silence not to escape the world, but to deepen our understanding of it. We learn to carry the silence within us, even in the midst of the noise and the chaos. We become islands of stillness in a restless world. We become beacons of clarity in a confused culture. We become expressions of the peace that passeth understanding, and in our presence, others find the permission to be still as well. This is the practice of living the truth. It is not something we do in our meditation sessions, it is something we do in our lives. We bring our presence into the supermarket, into the boardroom, into our families, and into our friendships. We are always practicing, always observing, always learning, and always growing. We are living with intention, and that intention is to be as fully, authentically, and compassionately present as we possibly can. We are living in a way that is consistent with the reality of our own nature, and that is a life of integrity, power, and profound, enduring peace. As we continue to walk this path, let us remember that the goal is not to become a different person. The goal is to become the person we have always been. Beneath the layers of conditioning that have obscured our true nature, we are clearing the mirror, not to change the reflection, but to see the reality clearly. We are removing the dust, not to create a new object, but to reveal the brilliance of the glass. We are coming home to ourselves, and we are finding that home is exactly where we have always been. Let us commit to this work with the fullness of our being. Let us show up, day after day, with the curiosity of a seeker and the courage of a warrior. Let us embrace the challenges, cherish the insights, and trust the process. Let us hold each other in this commitment, recognizing that we are not alone in this search, and that we are all, in our own way, reaching for the same truth. We are the architects of our own lives, and we are building a life that is not just efficient, but meaningful, not just productive, but present, and not just full of noise, but full of the deep, resonant, and life-changing silence of the present moment. We have spoken of the practice, the discipline, and the commitment. But there is one final aspect of this architecture that we must address, and that is the element of play. We must learn to hold our practice with a light heart. We must learn to laugh at our own seriousness, to smile at our own patterns, and to treat the entire journey with a sense of wonder and curiosity. We are not on a grim march towards some distant salvation. We are on a beautiful, evolving exploration of the mystery of our own lives. We should approach this with the playfulness of a child discovering the world for the first time. We should approach it with a sense of lightness, knowing that the outcome is already secured by the very nature of existence. This sense of play is the antidote to the seriousness of the ego. It is the way we keep the path from becoming a new set of rules to be followed. It is the way we keep our hearts open and our minds clear. When we can laugh at ourselves, we have already won. We have already broken the grip of the self-important ego. We have already stepped out of the hall of mirrors. We have already begun to live from the space of the heart. Let us carry this lightness into our daily practice. Let us bring a sense of humor to our moments of frustration. Let us bring a sense of wonder to our moments of boredom. Let us bring a sense of delight to our moments of connection. Let us live our lives as if they were a dance, a celebration of the simple fact that we are here, we are aware, and we are capable of experiencing the depth and the beauty of this miraculous existence. The practice is simple, but it is not easy. It requires our full attention, our total commitment, and our unwavering love for the truth. But it is the most important thing we can ever do. It is the work of a lifetime, and it is the work of this moment. Let us do it with all that we are. Let us be the architects of our own peace, and let us build a life that is worthy of the potential that resides within us. The path is open, the space is ready, and the choice is ours. In every moment, as we move forward into the light of our own awareness, together home at last, we find that as we practice, our energy changes. It becomes more stable, more focused, and more compassionate. We are no longer easily rattled by the turbulence of the world. We are no longer easily swayed by the opinions of others. We are no longer easily distracted by the allure of the digital flow. We are anchored in ourselves, and that anchor holds firm regardless of the storm. This is the stability that we have been looking for. This is the bedrock of our peace. We find that our creativity begins to flourish. We are no longer inhibited by the fear of judgment or the need for perfection. We are free to express ourselves, to explore, and to create from the depth of our own intuition. Our work becomes more impactful, our conversations become more resonant, and our actions become more meaningful. We are contributing to the world in a way that is unique, authentic, and deeply needed. We are finding our place in the tapestry of existence, and we are playing our part with grace and with ease. We find that our relationships are transformed. We are no longer using others to meet our own needs. We are no longer projecting our own insecurities onto them. We are connecting with them as they are, and we are allowing them to be themselves, without the need to control, to change, or to judge. We are building relationships that are based on mutual respect, on deep understanding, and on genuine care. We are discovering the joy of true heart-centered connection, and we are finding that it is the most fulfilling experience of our human lives. We find that our health begins to improve. We are no longer carrying the weight of chronic stress in our bodies. We are no longer suffering from the depletion of our nervous system. We are sleeping better, eating better, and feeling more vital, more energized, and more alive. We are honoring our bodies as the vessel of our awareness, and we are treating them with the care, the respect, and the love that they deserve. We are finding that when the mind is at peace, the body naturally finds its own equilibrium. We find that our relationship with time changes. We are no longer racing against the clock. We are no longer living in the anticipation of the next and the regret of the past. We are living in the fullness of the present. We are finding that time, when lived in the present, is not a limited resource, it is an infinite space. We are doing what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, with a sense of flow that makes the work seem almost effortless. We are finding that we have all the time we need, because we are finally living in the only time that actually exists. We find that we are beginning to experience moments of profound, unexplainable joy. Not the fleeting, conditional joy of achievement, but a steady, quiet, and deep-seated happiness that is the natural state of a mind at rest. It is the joy of being. It is the joy of the sun on our faces, the breath in our lungs, the sound of the wind, the presence of those we love. It is the joy of the truth, the joy of the path, and the joy of the homecoming. It is the joy of knowing who we are and being comfortable in our own skin. We are beginning to see the world with new eyes. We are seeing the beauty in the mundane, the significance in the small, and the depth in the surface. We are seeing the interconnectedness of all things, the perfection of the cycle, and the grace of the unfolding mystery. We are seeing that the world is not a place to be conquered, but a place to be inhabited, to be explored, and to be cherished. We are seeing that we are not observers of the world, but active participants in the creative unfolding of existence. This is the state of our transformation. It is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a life lived in accordance with the truth of our own nature. We are the architects of our own experience, and we have built a sanctuary of peace, a vessel of awareness, and a heart full of compassion. We are ready to take this into the world, to share it, to live it, and to be the difference that we want to see. We are ready to be the architects of a future that is not defined by our past, but by our capacity to be present, to be aware, and to be intentional, here and now, in the stillness of our own existence. The journey continues, and as it does, we find that the path itself is the reward. Every step we take, every breath we draw, and every moment we witness is a treasure. We are living our lives with intention, and that intention is the guiding star that leads us forward, into the infinite, the beautiful, and the true. We are the architects, we are the builders, and we are the inhabitant of the sanctuary. We are home, and we are ready to live the life that is calling us, fully, deeply, and without reservation. As we move forward, let us remember the lessons we have learned. Let us hold on to the practice of presence, the habit of witness, and the commitment to the truth. Let us be gentle with our failures, patient with our progress, and courageous in our exploration. Let us live with a light heart, a steady focus, and an open hand. Let us contribute to the world with love, with clarity, and with service. Let us continue to be the architects of our own peace, for ourselves, for our communities, and for the world. The path is clear, the truth is simple, the choice is ours. And in this moment, as we stand on the threshold of all that we are becoming, let us take a deep, full, and nourishing breath, and let us step forward into the light with the grace, the strength, and the profound, unshakable peace of those who have found their way home. We are the awareness, we are the flow, and we are the home. And that is all we ever needed to be. The stillness that now follows is not a void. It is a presence. It is the presence of the truth. It is the presence of the peace. And it is the presence of the infinite potential that we each carry within. Let us hold this presence. Let us dwell in this silence. And let us carry it with us into the world as we continue the beautiful, unfolding, and perfect journey of our lives forevermore. We have walked a long and winding road, peeling back the layers of the frantic, scattered geometry we once called our life. We have seen how the architecture of our attention was designed by external forces, how the tightness in our chests was the physical echo of our resistance, and how the narrative of the second arrow was the self-inflicted wound that kept us bleeding long after the initial pain had passed. Now, as we stand at the edge of this transition, we find that the final state of our journey is not a destination we have reached, but a state of being we have finally reclaimed. We have arrived at the threshold of what we might call luminous equilibrium. It is a state where the storm may still rage on the surface of our lives, where challenges will still arise and people will still come and go, but the depth of our own being remains as steady and undisturbed as the ocean floor. In this state of equilibrium, the need to control the world has evaporated, replaced by a profound, radiant trust in the unfolding of existence. We are no longer the builders of fortresses, constantly watching the horizon for threats. We are the open sky, holding everything that comes our way with a gentle, inclusive presence. The friction of unfulfilled desire, which once kept us in a state of perpetual hunger, has dissolved into the simple, quiet satisfaction of being exactly where we are. We see that the hunger was never for things, for status, or for the approval of others, but for the very presence we have now learned to inhabit. We have found that the relief of having nothing to defend is the greatest freedom a human heart can know. This luminous equilibrium is not a passive withdrawal, it is a dynamic, vibrant engagement with the world. We move through our days with a clarity that sees through the illusions of the ego, yet we act with a compassion that recognizes the struggle of everyone we encounter. We are like a mirror that has been cleansed of its dust. We reflect the world exactly as it is, without the distortion of our own fears or expectations. We do not try to change the world to suit our comfort, because we have realized that the discomfort was the catalyst for our awakening. We treat every moment as a sacred opportunity to practice, to observe, and to love. The noise of the modern world continues, but it no longer defines the boundaries of our internal peace. We have discovered that the silence is not something we have to go out and find. It is the fundamental reality that exists beneath all sound, all movement, and all change. We look back at the versions of ourselves that struggled, the ones who were so afraid of being incomplete, and we look at them with a kindness that is vast and unyielding. We realize that even those versions of us were doing the best they could, trapped in a cycle they did not understand. We acknowledge that the fragmentation we experienced was the necessary fire that refined our focus. We see now that there was never any mistake, no path that was truly wrong, and no moment that was wasted. Everything was a lesson in the art of returning to the center. Everything was a gentle push toward the truth of our own nature, which is wide, open, and incapable of being wounded by the transient events of life. We stand now in the light of this realization, and we understand that our potential is not something to be achieved, it is something to be revealed. We are not becoming something new, we are simply removing the debris that kept us from being who we have always been. We are the awareness that remains when all stories have been told and all roles have been played. We are the witness that observes the dance of life with a heart full of wonder. We are the peace that passeth understanding, because we have learned that the peace was never outside of us, it was the very source of our existence. As we carry this awareness forward, we recognize that our journey has only just begun. The beauty of this state is that it is infinite. There is always a deeper layer to uncover, a more subtle resistance to let go of, and a more profound capacity for compassion to cultivate. We are no longer afraid of the future, because we know that the future is just another moment of the present, and we have learned how to inhabit the present with grace. We are no longer defined by our history, because we have learned how to use our history as a teacher, not as a master. We are truly, finally, at the beginning of a life lived in accordance with our own deepest truth. We take this final, intentional breath, and we feel the depth of our own being settling into a quiet, unwavering resolve. We are the architects of our own peace, and we are ready to live the life that is waiting for us. One that is not defined by how much we have, but by how fully we are here. We are the light, we are the space, and we are the silence. We have arrived at the center, and we have found that it is a place of absolute, unshakable freedom. And as we turn to face the world again, with eyes clear and hearts open, we must ask ourselves one simple, lingering question. If you knew that the silence within you was not an absence, but the very essence of all that is true, what would you choose to create with the next beat of your heart?